All right, the snow is almost gone. Say it with me for the people in the back. We
Almost.
we are finally almost out of this chaos with just 6 days to go before Christmas. And what a weather week slash 2 weeks it's been. What a couple of weeks in sports it's been. But we're super happy to have you here with us on what is going to be an exciting episode tonight of the Gem City Sports Podcast. Welcome in, Isaac Petcash, Jonathan Williams, back better than ever. Well, at least we hope ahead of the Thanksgiving, or it's not Thanksgiving, Christmas break. That's how messed up my brain is.
Man.
Two kids will do that to you, I guess. Good to have you all in, everybody. Hopefully your Christmas plans are going according to plan and you're getting ready for the holiday in good spirits. We're here. We're excited. And Jonathan, I'm telling you what, I was telling my wife earlier this week, I said, it almost feels to me like Christmas has already happened because we had the snowfall, the winter weather. I was out for a few days in the hospital, and then all of a sudden, we're back to green grass again. So it doesn't necessarily feel like we're into the Christmas spirit, if you will. Although I'm sure next week that will change.
Well, I mean, for me, Christmas is a little bit different for me anyway. I'm used to 70 degrees and shorts on Christmas Day. So the fact that it's still, right around freezing between like 30 and 40 degrees, that's plenty of Christmas spirit enough for me.
Hey man, I get it. Sometimes things are a little bit different depending on where you are at. Hey, by the way, want to say to all of you, thank you for being a part of our podcast network. We've gotten some really good numbers over the course of the last few weeks with people forming. Thank you to all of you for being a part of what we do. A lot going on tonight. We're talking high school hoops to start the show. Hey, Makayla Presser-Palmer is going to join us. Just a junior at Northwestern. She's got about $1.5 million Division I offers. She is one of, if not the best player in District 10, minus maybe Lake Fields. She'll be joining us with her head coach for Northwestern girls basketball, who's 6-0 to start the season. So we're talking with them live tonight. Also tonight, college football. T. Frank Carr of Blue White Illustrated from Penn State is going to sit down with me. We're doing a long-form preview on Penn State SMU, a game which, Jonathan, I think I saw tickets now are down to like $40.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because you look at that game and tickets at $40, and you look at the Notre Dame game and you're getting up into the upwards of $300 just to get into the stadium. So it's interesting, kind of how these games are already being viewed and perceived, maybe from a pricing standpoint. Not a lot of people giving SMU a puncher's chance. So a lot cheaper to get into that game, and a lot of people thinking that IU Notre Dame game might be an interesting one to see.
I think the in-state rivalry plays a part in it, but I will say if you're a Penn State fan, you're planning on heading to the game, and you have a big enough car to put a pillow and a blanket, pull over at a Walmart parking lot and sleep there. Because if you thought tickets were cheap, and they are, you don't want to add a 2-night hotel stay. That's mandatory, by the way. If you're staying at a hotel, they require, I believe, a 2-night minimum on Friday or Saturday and Sunday night. Those prices are outrageous. So just don't do it. Just do what you're supposed to do and, hunker down in your car and be a good soldier on Friday night going into Saturday. Anyway, that's then. This is now. Our show, as always, is brought to you by Rebish Investments. Thanks to them for not just sponsoring our show, but keeping financial guidance simple. Make sure to follow them on their website at www.rebishinvestments.com, or you can call their number at 814-734-3433, keeping financial guidance simple. Rebish Investments, proud sponsor of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. Jonathan, let's talk high school hoops, because before we get to the Makayla Presser-Palmer interview, I thought it would be nice to maybe before the Christmas break go over a few teams who we think are really standing out above the rest early on. Now, if we miss any of the teams, there are plenty that we're not going to get to. We only have about 10 minutes or so here. But I want to start on the boys' side, because what you're starting to see in Region 6 specifically, and maybe even a little bit in other classifications and regions, is you're starting to see some separation, maybe from teams that we didn't necessarily expect to be dominating this early in the season. And to me, there are a few teams, Jonathan, that I think on the boys' side are just really crushing everyone, A, and B, I think playing probably better than what a lot of people, maybe even they, anticipated early in the season, just based on, late season expectations, if you will, for the district tournament. So what teams are you seeing early on? Give me one that you think stood out the most, because I think there are a lot to choose from.
I feel like you'd be remiss if you don't start with the team that's undefeated and has won 6 games. You're looking at Fort LaBeouf, who's sitting at 6-0, beat Warren and edged them out by 2 on Tuesday. But they are hot. They are rolling. They're playing good basketball early and kind of getting a jump on that daunting Region 7, where every game is going to matter in that region because it's going to be a lot of competition. You have to win a lot of games to come out of that region and have a firm spot in the playoffs. So they've gotten off to a hot start, and they're kind of a team that I have my eye on out of that region.
Let me just say something here when it comes to the region, because you were talking a little bit about it, and I think you're talking Region 5 and 6 specifically. Fort LaBeouf, a team in Region 5. Region 7 is a big one too, because it's got Meadville, McDowell, Prep, Erie. We'll talk about them in a second. No, it's all good. It's so many Erie County teams, it's hard to keep track. Sometimes I can't either. The thing that impresses me most about Fort LaBeouf, and looking at their early season results, the Warren game was really their only close result of the season, and that was a last-second victory as well. This Dragon team is a team that's made deep runs in the playoffs in the last few years. What I really love about the Bison is they don't have that one guy who's just completely dominating. Carson Pepe is their leading scorer. Via Max Preps, he scores just over 15 points a game. But then you look at the depth that they have built in this roster, whether it's senior guard Hunter Villa, who had a good year last year. He shoots the ball from the outside. But then you say, okay, Troy Gallner, just a junior who's come in and been pretty good from the block as a forward. Other players, too, that may not be on the scoreboard as much, but are playing great defense. I look at Grady Matkovich, who's just coming in his junior year as well, the guard position. One thing we've seen from LaBeouf that I have not seen in previous years is the depth of the lineup and what they've been able to produce. I think that's something that's going to be suiting this Bison team really well as they start moving into league play. They've won a game in the league play, and they got a couple of ones coming up at Franklin, Slippery Rock, Oil City, Corey. That's going to be a huge gauntlet in what's region games for them. The one issue that the Bison run into is a lot of their teams in the region aren't from Erie County, because you have to split up Region 5 and 6. So keep an eye on the Bison. I really like that team, and I think that they're one that, if they're going to want to run the gauntlet here, they're going to have to rely on their depth, because at some point they're going to run into a wall with teams that are just as good, if not maybe better, in terms of their roster than them. So I'd keep an eye on Fort LaBeouf, to your point, Jonathan. Also on the boys' side, can I just say, too, the team that to me has been the most impressive, and that with all due respect to McDowell and Cathedral Prep, who are still dominating, and they both are playing tournaments away from home. I know McDowell, I believe, is in Florida. Not quite sure where Cathedral Prep is, but I know that they're away from home this weekend as well. How about the Meadville Bulldogs? I don't know if you could argue, and maybe I'm wrong in this, who knows. I don't know if there's a more lethal combo right now in boys basketball in terms of the shooting touch than Jack Burchard and Lucas Luderin. We knew coming out of last year the ability that those two guys had to keep their team in the game. Burchard, a senior, Lucas Luderin, the same. They're both great shooting guards, can shoot the ball from three. The one thing that has been, at least in my mind, the most impressive for the two of them is that they're willing to take contested shots in double teams. I watched a little bit of their film in their last couple of games, specifically in the Girard game to begin the season on December 10th, because I thought that was really interesting. Then I actually went to some of the General McLean game on Friday, December 13th. They just have such good shooting touch, Jonathan. And to me, they remind me of a team, those two in particular, that know, even if they're trailing in a game, and they haven't really had to worry about that this year, save for the Girard game, those two shooters alone can get them back in games. And not that you want to rely on that throughout the season, but man, Burchard and Luderin, they're capable of coming back in any game this season, I think, as long as those two are healthy and on the floor.
Yeah, that's two weapons that you love to have, because you never feel like to your point, you never feel like you're out of any game. And then when you're saying these guys are pulling up and taking contested shots, you know how demoralizing that is for an opposing team to play against you, when they can be in your face, have a hand up, contest a shot, be in perfect defensive position, and the shots are still falling. That is one of those things, like defensively, it's hard to stop. There's not really very much you can do other than try to force them off of their spots and force them to give the ball up and deny the ball from them to begin with, because once they catch it, if they're in rhythm and they're in their spot, it doesn't matter if a hand's up, a hand's down, if you're in front of them, to the side of them, like they're knocking the shot down. So that's going to be a big weapon for them to have, especially going down the stretch when you're going to play some closer games. And you're going to have those games where you're coming from behind, where you let a team get out to a lead on you, and you might not start off as hot as you're used to starting. But knowing that you kind of got two spark plugs that can catch fire at any point in time and bring you right back, it's like an ace in the sleeve.
By the way, I know we're not talking football here, but if you're looking for one basketball game tomorrow night to keep your eye on, head down to the House of Thrills. Meadville's going to host Sharon. 2 undefeated teams playing tomorrow night. Sharon's got themselves a great start to the season. Sharon is a scary team in terms of what they are able to produce on the offensive side of the basketball. Via Max Preps are averaging almost 79 points a game in total. They have just blown teams out of the water. That game could be a 1st to 80 win sort of a game tomorrow night. I won't be there, but I'm certainly going to try to watch what I can on TV and other streaming platforms. Like, gosh, I hope that that's such a great game, because it certainly deserves a great ending. And I would keep an eye on Meadville. I'd keep an eye on Sharon. Other teams that I think that we have to go ahead, Jonathan.
I was about to say, Meadville's no slouch either. They've been scoring points at a high clip, 60, 70, 72. Like you said, that's going to be a 1st to 80 type of game, and it's going to be kind of offensive explosion. So if you like offense, if you like seeing guys put the ball in the hole, that's a game to get to.
Other teams that are ones that we want to mention heading into the Christmas break, and albeit it's early, these teams have only played a handful of games each. Fairview's got a good start to the season. They're now 5-1, and anytime Pat Flaherty has a roster that's at least competent, he's going to get them 10 times better than what they are. I'll tell you what, Will Harmston has been really, really good for this Tiger team. He leads the way in his senior season, averaging in double figures. And a big game tomorrow. You want to talk about a game that's huge for these two teams. You look at Region 6, and you've got the top team in the region in Fairview, and right now the bottom team in the region of Iroquois. They face off tomorrow. Braves have yet to win a game. Now, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because we had Ron Paisley on the show a couple of weeks ago, but this season is starting eerily similar for Iroquois as it did last year. They did not play well to begin this season. Now, granted, they've had a couple of tough games. They had to go to Sharon, play Jefferson, Ohio, which is a pretty good school out of the state to our east, to our west, and then a loss to Girard, who's been playing well. That game will be interesting tomorrow, Jonathan, just because I think if you're Iroquois, not that you want to panic super early, but if you drop to 0-5, now you're 0-2 in the region. One of the things Ron Paisley's team knows is that you can't lose all the time. Yeah, you can lose early, but you're not in 2A anymore. You jump up to 3A, and now all of a sudden, a 6 seed in that class may not be as enticing as a 6 seed in 2A as they got last year. I'm keeping my eye on that game as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can afford to take a couple of losses early. You can afford to kind of spend a little bit of time getting your bearings about you and finding your rhythm as a team. But eventually you got to kick into gear, and eventually you got to start stringing some wins together, because the longer those losses snowball, the harder you make your path and the harder you make your road if you're trying to talk about a playoff run and making a run at a district championship. So
yeah,
you gotta turn it around at some point, and this would be a good one to notch under your belt a little bit and kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction.
So a lot of good games happening tomorrow and throughout the weekend, and that was the boys basketball side against so many other teams that are playing so well. We just wanted to highlight a few, and to me, that matchup, Sharon-Meadville tomorrow, get ready. Anytime they get to play in football, whenever that happens, it's always fun. Same thing in basketball here coming up.
Fill it up, man.
They're going to be scoring a bunch of points coming up tomorrow night. Speaking of points, there's a team and a player who is scoring a ton of points early this season. And when we talk about girls basketball, Jonathan, at the early part of the season, we have talked about this one team much more than others, in part because they deserve it. 6-0, sitting with maybe the best player in all of District 10, and that's Northwestern girls basketball. And we are very pleased tonight to welcome in head coach Steve Sawin and Makayla Presser-Palmer, just a junior. Really, really hard to believe that that's the case with her talent and skill, but man, time flies. Steve, Makayla, it's great to have you both on. How are things?
Great. Good. Yeah, we just got done with practice, so good.
Yeah. Yep.
I was going to say, we apologize taking you after your shoot around. Hopefully this is the easiest thing you have to do tonight. But, I guess I do know that with the fact it's not snowing anymore, you probably are happy to actually get back in the gym as opposed to just doing some, workouts or whatever at home. First of all, Coach, I want to start with you on this, and Makayla, we'll get to you in just a second. You can answer this if you want. 6-0 to start the season. You haven't necessarily had the easiest of schedules, a couple of tough games, Fairview, Warren, Union City gave you a few points early in the game. Just how successful in your mind, despite, your record, which shows that you've been playing well, but give me where you stand right now, Coach, and what's your first year in this season so far?
Well, obviously, like any season, at the beginning of the season is a process, right? With new plays, new players, getting used to each other. We're not where we want to be. Obviously, 6-0 is a great start, but, we're going to continue to work hard. We have several goals this year, and our first goal has always been one game at a time. So, looking down, we've got some tougher opponents away and home, but, we're worried about Colonial Ohio on Monday, and that's how we're going to focus our season. And, as the girls kind of learn to play together, we'll get more and more successful. Our plays are new relatively for the most part, but then we lost 4 of our top 5 scorers last year. We have 4 girls that have stepped up, put a lot of time in the gym this summer. And obviously Makayla worked her butt off the floor, on the floor, conditioning, and just, she's building around her is going to be the easy part. Now getting to play together is going to be the hard part. And obviously the girls are up for the task right now. We're going to definitely push them, and no one sees us coming because we did lose 4 of our 5 star players last year. So, but again, we're going to be a wrecking, but once we figure out how to play together, we're going to be a tough out for a lot of teams.
Makayla, for those of you who are watching this episode who don't know you, I think you took the high school basketball world by storm. For those who weren't in Albion, I think everyone around you knew that you were going to be a great player, but you come in your freshman season, you put yourself on pace for 1,000 points after 2 years, and you get that 1,000 point last year. Now you're sitting and you just cracked, I believe, the top 5 in Northwestern girls basketball scoring history. So congratulations to you on that. But, I want to ask for you now in your junior season, I think, of course, the scoring leadership was there for you from your freshman year. But I'm sure now with you being that one returning starter, there's a position of leadership as a team leader that you feel. What's it been like for you now entering your upperclassman years, getting ready to try to lead a team that, was 1 win shy of a district championship last season?
I think my leadership's definitely stepped up since a lot of the starters left. And it's just it's a good role for me. I like having the leadership role, just being able to my teammates are comfortable around me, letting me lead them and everything. And it's obviously they're helping lead me too, and they're giving me advice. I'm giving them advice, and it's all just a team thing. So we all are leaders in some way, and it's very nice to have a team that as close as ours are.
Yeah, Makayla, obviously this isn't new to you, right? You've been doing this now for a couple of years, and you've been scoring the ball well, you've been rebounding the ball well, you're missed double at this point, averaging a double this season so far. Explain to me how you've been able to kind of stay grounded in all of it. You've got the college offers coming in. I know you probably walk through the halls at school and everybody is kind of high on you, and you're the hooper, you're the hooper at the school. So everybody knows who you are. Everybody's patting you on the back. How do you stay focused? How do you stay grounded and just keep working to get better?
Yeah, I kind of just not worrying about if how many points I scored ever. Just looking at my goal and winning games. It doesn't really matter if I score this many or this many. It's just focusing on my goal of wanting to play college, you know what I mean? And just it doesn't matter really if I do good in one game, because just focusing on my goal in the future is what I'm looking forward to. So that's how I kind of just keep my ground and everything. Yeah.
Makayla, to go back in the time machine 1 year, you had that great rivalry last season with Mercyhurst Prep that went 3 games. I imagine that your hope is that it goes 3 games again this year, at least at some point. When you look at the way last season ended, right, in that district championship game in Mercyhurst Prep, and obviously you had the opportunity to go further after that as well, in the game that happened afterwards. What learning lessons do you think you took as a team, just from your personal perspective and from a team perspective, that you think might be able to help you this year? I know it's early, but just as you roll through the season and the challenges that await, what might help you from the learning lesson you took from last season?
Something I definitely learned from like that game specifically and all the other games is just like to being like a closer team, which I think very like this year we are very close, and just being able to like talk to each other and just like getting back on defense and pushing the ball really is like key parts in our offense and defense. And if we do that, we'll be able to go very far. And again, like I said, talking on like offense and the defensive end would help us go really far in like playoffs and everything like that, winning a District 10 like title.
Coach, I'm sure we know Makayla's a team player, and I know you don't have to preach to her the team game, but you come in year one after what the team was able to accomplish last season. And I know you want to be able to preach a 5-person on the floor approach, but when you have a player and a shooter like Makayla, what's the balance for you in coaching in terms of saying, well, we want Makayla to get her shots in, but we want to try to have everyone be able to score and at least, play the game as equally as you can. What's your balance that you try to have between that game in, game out?
Well, the biggest thing that Makayla is we're talking communication has got to be huge, right? So she's going to get boxing one. She's going to get double teamed. They're going to throw everything at her right now to get her and let the other girls. So we've been focusing literally, the other 4 girls on the floor have to look to score, right? And we can't sit there and watch Makayla take over the game right now. Now, obviously she will at times, but for us to be successful, you need to have several players on the same page at every game. And I'm a defensive coach, right? It starts on the defensive side. If we can keep teams in check, we'll find a way to score, right? So this whole year, we've really put a lot of emphasis on help defense. We put a lot of emphasis on that extra rotation right now, because if we control the defensive side, the offense is going to take for itself, right? So, if you go back to the Boston Celtics last year, they're in the finals. Jaylen Brown comes out, takes a 5 stars and goes, listen, guys, if you're going to do it with confidence. I've said that 100 times, and I'll continue to say them. So make sure if you're going to do something, you're going to do it with confidence and make it look good, right? Because the only person really doesn't make it look good is going to be you, because you're actually going to perform the task. And the other thing we kind of harp on is we can't rebound turnovers, right? So take care of the ball, shoot the ball if you're open, and if you're shooting early in the season, at the end of the season when it's crunch time, you're not going to have the I don't want the ball in my hands attitude. We don't want that. We need 5 girls on the floor to we need to complement each other. So that's been a huge focus for me. All right.
So, Coach, obviously, like everyone puts a lot of attention on Makayla, and other teams put a lot of attention on Makayla. But for you, name for me maybe 1 or 2 other girls that you have that maybe don't get that same level of attention, but are really integral pieces for your team and bring things that you feel like your team needs to be successful.
Well, number 1 would be my bench, right? They're in the game. They're counting the last 10 seconds down of every quarter, right? No matter if we have the ball, we're making sure we're in the game. So, and then focusing the girls on the floor, Courtney Eddy, put her against anybody defensively, right? She can actually disrupt offensive for her quickness and how strong she is as a player. Lana, one of my better shooters on the outside. Nobody knows who her. No. You got to defend her. You can't triple team Makayla right now and leave many of my girls out because they have the confidence to hit the threes. We finally got Ashlyn healthy. She played only like 3 or 4 games last year. She got hurt early, her foot problems, and then she came back for the playoffs. And she got us a couple wins one solid win in the playoff last year when she came back off the bench. We had a transfer for Morgan. Morgan's stepping up. She's learning the offense. She's learning how to play with the girls. I got Haley, Tabby, and Emma coming off the bench, and it's a team approach. It's not an individual. Makayla's going to do what she does. Right? You're going to have a hard time stopping whatever she does. She worked probably harder than anybody in this offseason developing a 3-point shot. You saw her have 37 the other day with 7 threes. That's impressive, right? And it's not like she got those outside of her offense. She got that in her offense. So it's hard. She's a hard defend inside and outside now. So when you try to take her out of the game, everybody else steps up. So there's games that, Lana had 4 threes in a row at Fairview, right? You didn't see that coming. I did. I believe in these kids, right? They work hard. They put the time in, and it's fun. And, me and Coach Emily, we look at each other and go, wow, okay, let's continue to push them. Makayla's the hardest worker. Courtney's a hard worker. We push each other in practice because you need to have a strong practice to have a strong game. So our attitude is awesome. We don't have any drama, and it's fun to coach these kids. It really is. I'm enjoying the heck out of this year. So
Coach Steve Sawin and Makayla Presser-Palmer joining us here on the Gem City Sports Podcast. Let's talk the defense a little bit. I know we talk about the scoring all the time, but you look down at your 6 games, and in all but one of them, you've limited opponents to under 35 points. And Makayla, you look back at last year, and at least from my observation, one of the things that you did so well as a team in close games, maybe minus the District 10 championship, was you held teams and you forced them to make contested shots. What extra element, just from your eye, have you seen Coach Sawin bring to this team defensively this year that maybe has allowed you to step up your game in the backcourt this season?
Mm-hmm. He's definitely harped on being on the help line and being in help defense, which I think has been helpful, and knowing what teams strong suit is, if they like to drive or if they like to shoot. He really works on how what they do, so we know what each player is going to be doing on the defensive end, so we kind of know what their move is going to be, and we can adjust according to all of the players and what they do.
Do you feel like, Makayla, as you continue out through your career, the defensive end, your coach just talked about, okay, your 3-point shooting game and now your defense. Do you feel like as you now get into your junior season that you feel yourself starting to become more of a complete player? I know you're not there yet, and you would never say that you are, but do you feel like all the pieces to your game are getting to a point where you feel like now you're one of those complete players, as opposed to what a lot of people would look at you last year or the year before as maybe just a scorer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that as I get older, my game will continue to get stronger, and that's what I hope for, and that's what I practice on. But I definitely think now is when I'm really starting to put the pieces together on the offensive side and on the little things of the defensive side and both things. So I definitely think, as I continue to get older too, it'll really come together, and now it's starting to become I'm becoming a whole player. Yeah.
So, Makayla, if you, I don't know if you've watched us very much or if you've watched any episodes of ours, but I'm a South Carolina guy. And I watch a lot of women's basketball. I'm a fan of women's basketball at every level. So obviously I'm a Gamecock fan. Dawn Staley, that's my favorite coach. Asia Wilson in WNBA is one of my favorite players. And I'm curious to know, is there anyone, whether it be on the college side or in the professional game, that you kind of watch a lot of or try to model certain pieces of your game after? Is there anyone that kind of inspires you a little bit?
Oh yeah, I would definitely say fast-paced people and getting to the rack, or South Carolina, Malaysia Wiley. She's a very quick guard, and I would like to have my goal is to have quick handles like her, and Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame is a very good shooter and an overall player, even though she's really short. And I think that definitely even though I'm a wing and a forward, I would like to have those skills, especially for my height, to have a height advantage and to be able to have dribbling skills and shooting skills like that. So I definitely think those two players are the people that I my goal is to be like.
So, Makayla, just let it be known that if you need a recruiting pitch person for down south, that's your guy right there.
I went to South Carolina for a semester. I might have a couple connections.
Hey, Coach, before we wrap this up, it's still early in the year. You got a couple of big games coming up. I look specifically when you come back from the new year. Okay, Seneca's probably a big one that you're circling on January 9th. You go into the Christmas break, you're going to have a few days to think about, all right, what can we do in terms of keys just to keep it rolling in the second half of the season? As you get more into region play now, what is going to be the key for that consistency factor that you've shown early on in the year?
Defense intensity is going to be there. That'll even ramp up more as we kind of put more situations in on and off the defense, full court, half court. There's a lot more things we're adding to daily routines for the games, right? So we need to continue to put in place, and we're continuing to develop our defensive strategies to stop players, right? So this is a team approach, the way I've always coached. I played for Gerard under Holiday back in the 80s, and I was the defensive guy. I wasn't the scoring guy, but my job was to guard their best player. I've never lost that mentality, right? If I can find a way to shut somebody down and disrupt their offense, that's where we're going to be successful. So we're going to we're a very fast-paced team, and we're going to continue to put a lot of pressure on their offense and trying to disrupt as much as we can. The kids bought into it. They're working really hard, and again, it's going to take 5 girls on the floor, and the girls on the bench need to know when they come in, and we're not missing anything. The last couple games, we've been focused on our timing and our tempo, right? So a place for a shot there, and if we're not getting that shot off, we're off. So we dissect the next practice. Why didn't these work? And we make adjustments. So it's an evolution. One game at a time, though, right? I'm not looking past Colony, Ohio Monday, right? And then we got Corey in the shootout, and then after that we have John McClain. But one game at a time, I'll get ready for the next game, and what comes, right? I love, you'd like to see at the end of the year, you're undefeated. That means you won the states, right? But reality is, let's get there, right? So we're not going to be looking past Colony, Ohio on Monday, and then we go to the next game. So we're not, the big picture's there, but we don't talk about it. So.
And hopefully in between there, you can enjoy Christmas too, because I know it's chaos and crazy, but at least get you a little bit of a break ahead of the start of the new year. They are 6-0. They are Northwestern girls basketball head coach Steve Sawin and Makayla Presser-Palmer. Coach, congratulations on the great start to the year, and Makayla, congratulations on your accolades and cracking the top 5. Best of luck to both of you as you keep rolling through the season. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Good luck. So again, hopefully towards the end of the season, you invite us on again. We can talk about another, right? So again, we're just one game at a time. Thanks for what you guys do in the community in this podcast. So again, it's fun coaching a bunch of kids that like the game that I love to play. So it's awesome. So
love getting to watch teams like you, and we'll have you back. That's for sure. We got too many shows to have just us talking heads be here on Thursday and Friday nights.
Sounds good, guys. Hey, Merry Christmas, guys. Enjoy the holidays.
Merry Christmas to you both as well. Congratulations on the great start to the season. Hey, that's Northwestern girls basketball, 6-0 to start the year. I'll tell you what, Jonathan, and I know Coach Sawin was just talking about, all right, one game at a time, and I understand that. But for me, I look at it, I think, all right, they still got to get Mercyhurst prep a couple of times. Seneca coming up on January 9th. For as much as we talk about big matchups in boys basketball, I think really when you get to January, and from my experience, the end of January, girls basketball starts to take over and dominate, because you're going to have a lot of games and a lot of matchups with this team specifically and others included where there's just not going to be a lot of room for error. And I mean, of course, you look at Northwestern in the 3A that they play in, a lot of teams that could make a lot of noise. And so for the Wildcats 6-0, you heard Coach Sawin talking about it. Will they go undefeated this year? Probably not. They might, but you're going to have to be near blemish free if you want that number 1 seed in district playoffs and subsequently a trip to the state playoffs. And I think for Northwestern, they're thinking a little bit more than states. You're thinking, okay, let's get the number 1 seed out of our classification so we don't have to play a WPIAL powerhouse, i.e. the WPIAL number 1 seed likely to start the playoffs in states.
Yeah, and for me, obviously we put a lot of attention on Makayla, and rightfully so. She is one of, if not the best player in this entire area. However, for that team and for Northwestern, it's going to be done on a defensive end. They have played stifling and suffocating defense in their first 6 games. And I mean, you saw in the Fairview game where it wound up being a 3-point game. That was a reason why they won that game. That is going to be what's going to carry this team down the stretch. Makayla's going to get hers. The other girls that Coach mentioned are going to fill it up, especially from outside, because they have a lot of shooters on their roster. But if they are able to go possession in, possession out, and get stop after stop after stop, this Northwestern team is going to be really dangerous down the stretch. And that 1 seed doesn't look very far from within reach.
To your point, I think, and I don't want to talk about specific games, but I think you look at the Fairview game, I was able to catch the tail end of that one. I think when you look at that game specifically, and we talked a lot about the offense for Northwestern, but I wanted to throw in the defensive pitch as well. Steve Sawin, he mentioned his credentials in playing back in District 10 years ago, being a defensive guy. This is a team that, and I mentioned this, maybe it went unheard during the interview, 5 of their 6 games, they've limited teams to sub 35 points. I think the Fairview game in particular was a big reason and maybe a big jumping stone, if you will, for a Northwestern team that normally when a team plays Fairview and it's low scoring, Aaron Garrity's got that game in the bag. They are the queens of winning low scoring, tight defensive ball games. So this is a team in Northwestern that's going to be really tough to beat all season long. Seneca sitting at 5-1 with Haley Farrell and the rest of that squad. They're going to be a tough out as well. They're sitting right behind Northwestern. They're not going to be an easy out after winning a game in districts last year. And then you look at some other teams as well, whether it's Wilmington at 6-0. Don't sleep on GM. They're 4-2 and they've won their last 3. Erie High's got 3-0 in their 6A category. Girls basketball, man, that's just as good, if not, top tier as boys basketball. So, and kudos to you for that South Carolina recruiting pitch. We'll see if Don Staley hears us up here in Erie, PA.
Hey, man, if there's any way I can help, I will try to. I know a couple people around those programs, the men's and the women's programs. So, not promising anything, but yeah. Makayla keeps handling her business. I might not have to say very much of anything at all. I think Dawn might be coming.
She's going to have her pick from D1 offer. She's already gotten a bunch, and she's likely going to get even more if she doesn't commit in the next few months. So we'll see exactly how that works. And congratulations to Northwestern. I'm sure we'll be talking to them more as the season goes along. Hey, we're going to get to college football with T. Frank Carr in just a moment. Before we do, our show, as always, brought to you by Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. Of course, make sure to go to their website, www.rebichinvestments.com, or you can simply call them during business hours like tomorrow morning, 814-734-3433. Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance. All right, back on the program. Let's talk Penn State, shall we? They got a big game coming up on Saturday. The first ever home college football playoff game for the Nittany Lions, taking on SMU on Saturday. And we shift our focus now with T. Frank Carr, host of Blue and White Illustrated. Those guys, they just do everything in their mother and then some to get you ready for Penn State football. You've gotten no sleep, I'm sure, my friend, this week. Am I right on that?
Yeah, on top of the fact that I can't help but whine and complain because that's who I am. I was coming back from your neck of the woods. This is how it relates. I was coming back from where I grew up, which is close to Erie, even though it's not close to Erie, because you know how it is. If you're close to Erie, it means you're 45 minutes away.
Right.
I got into a car accident, and my car is totaled. So that's been fun. On top of everything else, got to deal with that. So with Christmas and football and all those things, it has been nonstop, wall-to-wall action. But the good news is I have football to distract me from all those things that are super annoying. And everyone's fine. I should always start. Everyone's fine. Nobody got hurt.
That's good. That's what's good news. And I'll tell you what, too. It's funny. I don't know if there was still a lot of snow on the ground when you came from Erie. Right now, it's green grass. We have no snow. Oh, yeah. So we've got like a 75% chance of a green Christmas, and I'm laughing with my wife. I'm like, I feel like Christmas should be over at this point because the fact that we have no snow anymore is kind of wild. And then to your point, I will correct you a tad. If you live close to Erie, you're right. You either live 45 minutes out or you're in Pittsburgh-ish. The Grove cities of the world, the Slippery Rock of the world. You live down south.
Listen, here's the thing. You just don't know what to say because somebody's like, where are you from? And I'm like, you have no idea. Like right. I could point to it on a map. I could take you there and you'd be like, I don't know where I am. This is nowhere. That's correct.
I was born near a lake. That's essentially my normal answer at this point. When people ask. But hey, speaking of PA, about 3.5 hours down the road from our place, Beaver Stadium is going to be rocking on Saturday. And I want to get into the game in just a moment, but I think it'd be remiss if we didn't start with Bo Pribula in the transfer portal. And, we could spend hours about talking, how the transfer portal is flawed. And I know James Franklin made a bunch of comments on that earlier in the week. But from a team perspective and from a strategies perspective, what does Andy Kotelnicki now lose with Bo Pribula not being a part of this squad?
It's difficult to say because you have the opportunity and the option to use the package that he's a part of or not use it. So really what they've lost is the time it takes for the program to prepare for Bo Pribula. I was going through some of the numbers and, starting reps aside, standard quarterback reps aside, once the team had already won the game and Drew Aller was done for the day, the major game he was in was Purdue in, I want to say that was like early October, late October, early November. I apologize. Don't know. But he had like 5 carries for 40 some yards. Other than that, like the Bo Prabula package has been a part of the offense, but a small part of the offense. And honestly, Tyler Warren had been assuming some of those duties. He's thrown more passes during the competitive portion of the game, I think, at this point, than Bo Prabula has. So when you talk about it's more a function of the run game. They lose their ability to do some of their read option stuff. And one of the things that I think may have been on the table and would be a part of this weekend's game is they like to do read option in a little bit of a different way, where they don't read the end man on the line of scrimmage. They actually will read a defensive tackle or a linebacker in the A gap, which changes things for the defense. It's almost like playing left-handed from a feel perspective, where you're now putting a different athlete in space. And so they can do those things, but Bo Prabula was the most proficient at that particular skill set. So it's going to be a division of labor that I think they can manage. But really, I mean, in that Purdue game I'm talking about, they had 3 separate quarterbacks in 3 separate plays that did 3 different things. And so that's the part of kind of the change up that you don't have in your lineup without Bo Prabula specifically.
Do you think, and I know that you do a really good job of breaking down the film, and I know you haven't talked to James Franklin directly. No one does. And Coach was pretty, I think, adamant about the fact that, look, he said, we didn't expect that Bo was going to transfer. He told us as of a few days ago we expected him to stay. Was it just a simple decision of Drew Aller coming back that you think led him to this call? And how off guard do you think Penn State was taken by this news?
So the decision, I don't think that was a surprise. And we've been talking about Drew Aller's return and his likelihood of that being the plan for a while at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Our reporting, we have a bunch of awesome, really well-connected reporters. Nate Bauer had been on that story for a while. So great reason to join us, by the way. If you want to join for $1, you can try us out for a week. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is where you go to do that. The thing that I think is about the decision was, and James Franklin outlined the conversation he had with Bo Prabula, was once that decision from Drew was known, it was not a surprise that Bo would then transfer. But James Franklin had made it clear in that press conference they were willing to work with him to make it work where he would stay on the team. But he even gave a timeline of Sunday night, Prabula was practicing, and it just wasn't working. He was not fully engaged. And Penn State has not necessarily an all-in, all-out policy, but yeah, kind of. Like, you have to be fully present. You have to be fully competitive in the environment, or else it's not going to work. Because if Bo Prabula has to come into the game and play, not just in his normal package, but if Drew Aller gets hurt, he can't not know what the plan is, because he was trying to set up a visit to Missouri and to Iowa.
Yeah.
So, again, James Franklin went to extreme lengths to give Bo Prabula credit for being a man's man and having a hard conversation about how do we make this work and trying to make it work. But ultimately, he didn't feel like he could do for himself what he needed to do in his future to do both things. And if you have to make a choice, at a certain point, you have to choose yourself over the team. Because it's great if Penn State wins a national championship and then he's still not a starter in the spring because he has lost out on all the opportunities, because teams can't just wait around for him to enter the portal.
In a way, and tell me what your thoughts on this are, because I was having a couple conversations with a couple people back here, and I think the frustration, not just for Penn State, but for everyone in college football, is, look, the transfer portal, the windows in which they open and shut are ridiculous now that we have the 12-team playoff. And I almost wonder, T. Frank, in a way, and maybe in a roundabout bad way for Penn State, but they probably had to be the guinea pig in this experiment, I think it almost is going to take a guy like a Bo Prabula leaving at this point in the season for college football to start debating the change to the transfer portal. And then it makes you wonder, too, is if you're another team in the college football playoff, I'm not going to say like an Arch Manning would have this situation, but, what's stopping these players now from holding the university hostage and saying, hey, look, I'm a really good backup or I'm a fringe starter. Either pay me a bunch of money right before the playoff or I'm leaving. I just think it created a lot of chaos, especially for now. You're looking at the 4th ranked team in the country and the number 6 seed.
Listen, Isaac, It goes deeper than that, I would say. Diego Paiva, I apologize, I don't know how to say his last name. The quarterback for Vanderbilt,
yeah,
that just sued for longer time because of his JUCO resume, like not having that count. What's to say that you can't just stay in college football if none of these rules are enforceable? How does this not, like, you have an 8th year starting quarterback, like you have a decade in college football? Like, what if you can transfer? What if early enrollees can sue to play in the college football playoff? You know, you bring in freshmen. I don't know. Anything is possible if you have enough lawyers at this point. So there's nothing that is, and I've heard that before, right? What stops these players from doing that? Well, I think there is still some level of, and this is going to be the optimist in me, of like honor, that sure, you can hold out, but you'll be blackballed. Who's going to want to work with somebody who's going to hold everybody hostage in that sort of situation? I'm sure somebody will, but in the end, like, that does come back to you. You know, reaping what you sow eventually comes back to you. And if you want to do that, you won't play in the playoff. You won't have the opportunity to show what you can do at the highest level. And if you're saying, like, for a backup, okay, then we'll play without you. You haven't been playing anyway. So I think there are those conversations and there are those kind of doomsday scenarios. It could happen. I also think that person would be doing massive damage to themselves and their own reputation. And in the end, like in name, image, and likeness, in the NIL era, that your name, why would you destroy and tarnish your name to try and leverage money out of your name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to cause a lot of questions and concern moving forward in what's the first year of a 12-team playoff. And we just saw, hey, look, teams that are hiring coaches are hiring GMs now too. And you're going to have an NFL-like system for college football, certainly at least next year, if not the end of this year. But that's then. This is now. T. Frank Carr, Blue White Illustrated. Make sure to give him a follow and go subscribe if you haven't already. Let's talk the game. It's going to be, 20s, maybe a chance of flurries the night before when these two teams go head-to-head. What, in your mind, is the first couple of things when you dive into the film on this matchup, T. Frank, that pop off the page to you in terms of things Penn State will need to do Saturday afternoon?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things. I guess you need to point me in a certain direction, offense or defense, because we could go for 10 minutes on either side.
Well, let's start with the offense, because maybe we can morph this conversation to Drew Aller. Now, obviously, you would prefer Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. I think in the championship game against Oregon, they both go over 100 yards. You'd love to see them run the football. But now Drew Aller for sure is the starter moving forward this year, as we knew, and next year as well with him coming back. Yeah. What's got to be the game plan in your mind with the cold weather, but also knowing, hey, look, you have a quarterback that maybe played his best game of the season in the Big Ten championship game?
Yeah, I don't know, because James Franklin came out and there's some vague sort of signaling that maybe some of the things that they were doing were game plan specific against Oregon. They had to score a lot of points in that game. So some of the aggressiveness, some of the things they tried to do, coming out and throwing the ball all over the yard, I think that might have been game plan specific. So I don't know that you'll see the same play style, because I think Penn State will go back to, as you pointed out, run the ball, cold weather, those sort of things. Against a good front seven, we've been having this debate all week about how do you value a team that plays in the ACC versus the Big Ten and their run defense metrics. They're good football players up front. If this, just from my film evaluation, if these players played in the Big Ten, they would be a good Big Ten defensive line. Would they be dominant to the level of statistics that they have? Probably not. So the answer is somewhere in the middle. The question to me is, will they need Drew Aller to run the ball the same way that he did in the Oregon game, in that highest of leverage situations, knowing you needed to lay it all on the line to potentially beat Oregon? Or do they feel that they can do without him running between the tackles? Because that's what some of these option plays in Andy Kotelnicki's offense will do. And that's what Bo Prabula was doing, taking some of those plays of running between the tackles on those quarterback options away from Drew Aller. So if they can run the ball in the standard run game, traditional run game with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, and I think there's a good chance they can do that, it's going to be to the percentage that they're able to do that in the run game. Are they going to be able to explosive and dominate? If they do that, Isaac, there's no way that SMU can hang with Penn State. if they're able to run the ball and be explosive. Because on the back end, I think this is a good defense. I like the scheme. I like the things they try to do. But at the same time, Drew Aller, the processor, the mental quarterback mind, he's too good. When you give him something he knows how to read, and this defense ultimately lands in the same coverage. They rotate a lot. They try to obscure coverage, but it generally ends. Like, if I can see it, they can see it. And so, I think he can slice and dice a zone coverage team. And if you give him the run game already, I have a hard time seeing where SMU keeps up, because Penn State should be able to score a lot of points in this game. And that's my expectation, that they will have a good, efficient day. And whether or not it's a blowout depends on how well the run game plays and, of course, how well the defense can contain SMU's offense.
It's so interesting that you mentioned the run game, because I think, we had been having the debate on this podcast network for the last week as to whether or not the Allen Singleton 100-plus yard game against Oregon was more so of a fluke and a need, or if it was the start of a trend. And I think we've seen Nick Singleton all year be effective. This was really, from my eye, the first time Katron Allen really ran effectively as the number 2. Is it the Oregon game for you more of a fluke, or is there something you saw on film that you think they can bring in, not just to this game, but certainly games down the road in the playoff, because they're going to need it, right?
I've been asking the coaching staff. Those are the questions I've been asking, and not directly that, because they won't answer a direct question like that because it gives away the scheme. But the question is, how often can you go to the well with some of the things that you used in that Oregon game to be successful? And here's what they did. They would, first off, they didn't think they could run the ball against Oregon. I think that's pretty clear, because they came out and threw the ball in the entire first half. And suddenly they hit some of those runs. That first run with Nick Singleton got things going. But I think they ran the ball 3 times in the first quarter. 2 of them were Drew Aller. I'm trying to remember. One of them was Tyler Warren, and the other one, I think, was a Bo Pribula option play. Mm-hmm. So they had the whole kitchen sink ready to go, and then they just pivoted in the second quarter to hammering the Oregon defensive line. And the thing about that defensive line was they're very strong, and they can play both odd fronts and even fronts, meaning a nose tackle or 2 defensive tackles. That's what that flexibility of the size of that D-line was able to do. SMU can do similar things, not to the same horsepower, but they can do similar things between odd fronts. They have a 350-pound nose tackle that plays, across the line in a couple of different ways. They primarily play a 4-down front, but what Penn State did against Oregon was they ran tempo. So they would get a good play, or they'd make sure they get a first down so they don't go 3 and out quickly, and then they would go quick. And so that did 2 things. It made those big bodies up front run laterally in their outside zone scheme. So now you're getting them tired, and you're not running right at them. And then when you run tempo, they can't do those stems right before the snap where suddenly they're in a 4-down front, and now they shift the alignment on you, and your blocking changes as the ball's being snapped. So can Penn State do those same things a week and a half later, the next game, or do they have to go to their bag of tricks and do other things, which includes, it would have included the Bo Pribula package, or Tyler Warren running the ball, or direct snaps to the running backs. Any of those things are on the table. And to me, it does become, can they run their standard run game of running outside zone, making a bigger physical defensive line that you see from this team run laterally and make them chase you? That's, to me, the key to the blowout, because that's where I think if Penn State was able to do that, then, you get Nick Singleton into the second level against a couple of safeties and 5'11" run linebackers, and I would expect massive explosive plays in that situation.
And to your point, with Pribula no longer with the program, if the running game can't get going, you've got the pressure on Aller. So Singleton, Allen going to be huge players, especially early in the game. I'm with you. We'll get to predictions a little bit later on. If Penn State gets a couple of big rushes early in the game, it's going to be a long day for SMU. But, T. Frank, the Mustangs do have Kevin Jennings, and it scares me. I think with his dynamic and mobility at quarterback, I don't know if Penn State's seen that this year. Dylan Gabriel maybe a little bit early in the season. But when we flip now the SMU offense, and we know Penn State's strength is their agility on the defensive line, right? What's the game plan got to be for Kevin Jennings, knowing he can do it with his arm and with his legs?
What's the game plan for Kevin Jennings? Run. Like, literally, watching the game plan against Clemson, I think they've done a good job of coaching the offensive line and getting good players. But again, good players, I don't know that they're to the level of Oregon. And Penn State has played with Ohio State. They've played with Oregon. They have played with the best of the best in the country. And SMU's talent is not at that level. So when we're talking about pass rushing, run defense, the offensive line to me is the biggest question mark for SMU. And they have it built into their offense that they run reverses and do all kinds of things in the run game to try and get their running backs and receivers involved and run away from the interior of their offensive line, which I think is the weakest part of their offense. So it's going to be about getting to the edge. It's about Brashad Smith getting to the edge and Kevin Jennings getting to the edge and trying to find Kobe King and Tony Rojas in space. Break tackles, and I don't think you're going to get explosive plays because Penn State can afford to play with 2 high safeties, which keeps a lid on everything, including explosive runs, but you will start to chunk away at that, and then maybe you force Penn State to creep up a little bit, and it's the out-of-structure plays that I think are the biggest danger of all, because you can win and still lose the down with Kevin Jennings. I was a little bit shocked. James Franklin compared him to Lamar Jackson on Wednesday night when asked about his ability and, have they seen a quarterback like that? I think he was talking about the ability to extend the play and throw, and not necessarily the athleticism, because I did not have that in my bingo card as to we're bringing up Lamar Jackson. Also, he brings up Lamar a lot. I think James Franklin just has a huge man crush. He has a huge football crush on Lamar Jackson.
Maybe he's trying to give more credence to the ACC than what they actually deserve. I don't know. Those quarterbacks that come out of that conference, maybe the defense ain't there, but he must think the offenses are powerhouses. I'll tell you what, because that's some sort of a comparison. T. Frank, staying on the Penn State defense, I think another argument maybe you've had is, okay, the Oregon game. Was it just that they got overpowered? We talked about that a little bit last week on Flagship City Sports Talk, and the fact that Oregon just has so many weapons and Penn State really allowed them to play the game on their turf. What do you think that defense learns? What's got to be the one thing Penn State has to shore up defensively when they take on SMU on Saturday?
I have a hard time with this conversation because I see it in the chat, in the replies to our YouTube videos. I hear it in the questions that everyone asks James Franklin and Tom Allen, and it's all about like throws over the middle, right? Throws over the middle. They're not facing Oregon this week, and I know that we're all creatures of the moment. We're all captured by what happened last. SMU doesn't have the athletes to challenge Penn State's defense the same way. What we just talked about, starting with the offensive line. The Oregon offensive line challenged Penn State's athleticism and used it against them and was able to gash them in the run game, which then caused a cascade of effects to open up the middle of the field. If you don't have that first part, the second part never materializes. And on top of that, Penn State was playing 2 deep safeties. They were not stacking the underneath. They were not flooding the middle zones, trying to take away short passes because they were too worried about guys going over the top. Because if you watch the Ohio State game, Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart just ran by some guys for touchdowns. So you have to be aware of the personnel and the plan coming in. SMU does not present those challenges outside of the running back and the quarterback. So I don't view the Oregon game as anything to learn for this game. They go back to playing the game they play, press man coverage, being aggressive, taking everything away, taking away the first read, and making Jennings not just have to play out of structure, but get to his second and third read. Because he's a quarterback first. Athleticism, he's a good runner. I don't know that he is, I don't know that he's Lamar Jackson fast, but he's a good athlete. And if you force him to then make decisions outside of what he's comfortable in, you can start to turn the football over. That's what Manny Diaz did at Duke when they played, and somehow they lost that game. I have no idea how Duke lost that game. I was watching the film, and I'm like, wait a minute, they lost?
Was that the 6th turnover game?
Yes. Yeah.
Don't know how that ever happens.
Yeah. And so there's nothing to me, I shouldn't say nothing. There are few things that go from threads that go from one game to the other. And I think that fans just view it as a roller coaster, right? So now these players are bad. These are the same players, but if you stress them through scheme and athleticism in different ways, you get different results. But if you can't apply the initial pressure, you don't get the bend that you got from the Oregon game.
T. Frank Carr, Blue White Illustrated, Penn State coverage, joining us here on the Gem City Sports Podcast, is always brought to you by Rebich Investments. Let's talk about who you got in this one, T. Frank. I know you alluded to it a little bit in our conversation just a few minutes ago, but someone was talking about in a couple of podcasts that I was listening to was, as much as we harp on James Franklin for not winning the big game, one thing they don't do is lose to teams ranked below them. Yeah. And I look at this game and I think, okay, cold weather. SMU has to practice in 70-degree heat. You mentioned they don't have the athletes. I don't know if they have anybody that can stop Carter and Dennis Sutton. Who do you have in this game? The line's 8.5. Is that too low, too high? If you're a betting person and you're picking this game, where are you going Saturday?
Don't take my advice.
Mine either. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, I just want to make sure, SMU has good athletes, and they can score on Penn State, and they can frustrate Penn State's offense. But the comparison is to Oregon because that was the last game. So Do they have Oregon's athletes? Hell no, they do not. But they do have a good football team. So I just think Penn State is better. Nick Singleton is playing great. Katron Allen is playing great. The offensive line, I think Nolan Rucci has really, from a confidence perspective, has stepped his game up. He has become a better pass protector from a technical standpoint. Watching him early in the year and watching him against the number one team in the nation, different football player. Still the same athlete, still needs to get bigger and stronger in the offseason, and I think he can be very good. But right now, he is a guy you could, it feels like you can win with. And again, I don't see any athletes over there that could attack his weaknesses, which are speed to the outside. That's where he's had the most trouble since he put on the blue and white all the way back in the blue-white game in the spring. So Penn State's going to score. And I think that the defense is going to do enough, as you mentioned, to hold down SMU. My initial score was 34-17, and then James Franklin uttered the words Lamar Jackson, and I was like, I might want to give him a field goal just for the comp. So my official prediction is 34-20. I think Penn State could score 40 in this game because this sort of defense is the kind that, unless they come out with something completely different, this is the kind of defense that Andy Kotelnicki really succeeds against, where it is, I think that I've called it Big 12 adjacent. I don't want to slander them by calling it a Big 12 defense, but some of the schemes and some of the things that you're trying to hide, some of the deficiencies in talent, are Big 12 adjacent, and they're just good. They're a good football team. Penn State, as you mentioned, has handled good football teams, and I think they do it again.
That is T. Frank Carr of Blue White Illustrated. Sir, go ahead and give us your plug one more time. Where can we find all your content?
Yeah, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is the main place you go for all of the info and information. If you want to hear me talk on, and by the way, thank you. I as the host of the show, I try to set up my guests, and I try to set up, Sean Fitz and Nate Bauer and Ryan Snyder and Greg Pickle. When I'm given a platform and I could talk for another hour. I'm a giant loudmouth, and I know that bothers some people. But if you want to go to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, we do 3 shows a day, 3 shows a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Throughout the year, obviously the holidays are going to change that schedule a little bit. We have a live post-game show after the game, immediately following every Penn State football game. We have a tailgate show. You can check out all that stuff on Blue White Illustrated on YouTube, but BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, that's the place you want to go. You can sign up for $1 and you get access to the site. I hope I didn't overload you with information there, but those are the main places you got to go.
No, and we do our best to overload people as well. So I don't think it's possible that this is the business we're in, my friend. We talk, and people somehow love to listen to us, and we're grateful for it. Hey, man, enjoy the game on Saturday, and hopefully we'll talk to you next week or the week after Christmas when Penn State's playing Boise State in a couple of weeks' time. Good stuff, T. Frank.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is T. Frank Carr of Blue White Illustrated. Great stuff from him ahead of Penn State SMU coming up on Saturday. Hey, I know I didn't give my prediction, but we're going to be giving our predictions coming up in tomorrow night's show because tomorrow at 7 o'clock, we have another brand new Gem City Sports podcast. Make sure to check that out. We have college football playoff first-round predictions with Penn State, SMU, Ohio State, Tennessee, and the like, plus NFL Week 16 predictions. Wayne Bradford going to join us. Jonathan Williams going to join us. And we're debating whether or not the Steelers are actually going to win the AFC North or not. Saturday's game against Baltimore has a heck of a lot of importance where that is concerned. Hey, by the way, make sure to check out Rebich Investments. They are the sponsor of our podcast. As always, brought to you by Rebich Investments are our shows, keeping financial guidance simple. For more info, you can visit their website, www.rebichinvestments.com, or simply call 814-734-3433 today. Again, 814-734-3433. All right, Jonathan and Wayne, join me tomorrow night. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, everybody. Take care. Enjoy it. It's going to be a heck of a Friday when we get ready for the first weekend, the last weekend before the Christmas holiday. Take care. This has been the Gem City Sports Podcast, brought to you by Rebich Investments.